this is John for SwitchSafe. Thanks for tuning into part 2 of 5 Minutes for Huge Growth in 2018. In our first part, we were talking to Mr. Jones and doing an interview to help him flip the switch on choosing us as his advisor on the first meeting. During that process, we had a conversation with him about his current financial stuff. And we said something like, Mr. Jones, tell me about a couple of those things that you currently have. And in that discussion, we found out that he had a mutual fund. He brought his statement, and let's say it's ARTMX, just as an example. We're going to add that as a current investment. And we talked to him about his Jackson National. We asked him, Mr. Jones, tell me about that Jackson National that you have. How much are they charging you? And he said, I don't know, I think about 1%, but I never really know. So we're going to pull up this Perspective 2 that he owns and put that as a current investment. Then I'm going to put in here just a couple other options just as discussion points. Let's use a real low-cost Vanguard fund that maybe you would have in some sort of managed account and add that a proposed. Maybe we'd look at something like an indexed annuity, something again very low cost. Add to comparison. And just as another example, I'm going to put in here, show you there's alternative investments as well. We're just going to leave that off at this point in time. So click here, run comparison. And Mr. Jones, let's take a look at it. I'm not quite sure what you are paying here in those accounts that you own. Takes just a second here, doing this on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, whatever you have in front of you at your meeting, and you say, well, Mr. Jones, you have this mutual fund here. It's 100% liquid, and let's see what it costs. It costs you 1.19% per year in that mutual fund. And you brought up to me this variable annuity. So let's take a look. Well, it was a Jackson National issued product. When you purchased it, it had a 7-year surrender charge, and here was the surrender charge. 10% free liquidity each year means that each year while you are under the surrender charge, you can get 10% out without paying any type of penalty. Here are some of the costs inside this contract. You have a base contract fee of 1.1% and an admin fee of 0.15, which brings you up to 1.25. Then from there you have sub-accounts that you put the investments actually in, and you have 99 choices of that. And they range in costs from 0.56 to 2.19%. Let's say in the middle somewhere, we say 1.5. So if we take 1.25 plus 1.5, we're now up to 2.75%. Now you have these living benefit riders, and the one that you picked up here has 1.2. So now we're at 2.75 plus 1.2, we're at 3.95%. And if you have a death benefit on here, we have additional expenses cost. If you'd like to take a look at the prospectus, we can click right here. It'll open the prospectus up for us to take a look at it. Mr. Jones said, no, John, wow, I didn't realize that I was paying more than 1% in that. At this point in time, that is where this data is so valuable. Now they're looking at you to solve the problems, show them some options. And you say, would you be open to discussing the way that we do business? And of course, most of the time the answer is going to be yes. So here you can pivot. You can show any types of products that you work with. Oftentimes, if you're working in a fee-based relationship, you'll use very low-cost ETFs or mutual funds. In this case, you can show that when we work in our fee-based products, our expenses, our internal expenses, are as low as 0.04% versus the 1.19% that you're paying in your mutual fund and the close to 4% that you're paying in your annuity. We also, if you want to look at where the market's been at and take a little bit of the risk off the table, we can put you into certain types of products that protect your principal and still give you some sort of upside potential in the marketplace without having all of those 4% fees. And here's an example of that, our index annuity. Click on the link, go directly to the fact sheet. So everything that you need to not only show them the expenses and what's involved with their existing investments, but any of the solutions that you may come up with and you like to work with are all available here at your fingertips while you have momentum, while you have flipped the switch and getting the client to do that buy-in. From there, we have our documentation system where these are fully customizable at each firm level. So these boxes are fully editable to whatever type of documentation you want for the transaction. You can have an unlimited number of tabs up here at the top. Down here, though, is where we go into specific questions that the DOL are trying to address. Now, I understand the DOL at this point in time has been overturned by the Fifth Circuit Court, but the SEC has already spoken about what their intentions are for coming up with some universal standards. And it's going to be something about doing the best interest for the client, or at least disclosing the compensation and or fees within an account, and some sort of documentation of proving that what you're doing is in the client's best interest. So we actually have specific questions over here on the right hand side that we document, such as, does this meet their objectives? Does it meet an impartial conduct standard? Are you charging additional management fees on the account? Do you have conflicts of interest? Are you misleading statements to the customer? What questions were asked by the client? We're seeing these wave of arbitrations that come back with clients saying they don't understand that the product that they purchased. Well, at the time of sale, a client should understand that unless, in order to buy a product. So that's where we ask and document right here what questions were asked. They may be asked about a rider, or they asked about liquidity, or they asked about fees, or they asked about market risk, or whatever questions. We document those and ask if they're satisfied with the answers, of which then we can use either digital signature capabilities on your phone, tablet, or computer, or print off, use pen and ink. What materials were provided to a client? You've given them a prospectus, an illustration, a side-by-side fee comparison, whatever materials. Client can attach or a signature that they received those. What features of the product were discussed? Do you understand those features? Again, is this a rider? Is this a surrender charge, a participation rate, a cap rate, any of the fees, whatever it could be? Do they understand those features? Yes, they document that. What other products were considered? What else did you look at to choose that this was in their best interest? And how did you ultimately get to this final product that you selected? And then this is a very important box. This is our transaction notes, where we take about 3 minutes with the client to document how this whole transaction went down. And the reason we do this is because oftentimes a compliance officer will tell an advisor to have meeting notes and have something in a CRM to document how the transaction happened. The only problem is the client has never attested to that information. So if you ever get to an arbitration or a court of law, your meeting notes really are probably unadmissible because the client has never agreed to it. So that's just more of your side of the story. Whereas if we document it here and the client signs off on these transaction notes, now they've agreed to what happened during that transaction, and it's going to be a lot harder for the story to change, be it 3, 4, 5 years down the line. So here we position to the client, listen, we've gotten to this point, we've been through 3 or 4 meetings, we have decided, or you've decided that you want to purchase X product. You've already signed the application for that. Here is where we need to document for our compliance staff how we got to this point. And you tell the whole story. They came to a seminar, or you got them as a referral, you went through a fact finder, you looked at what they had, you compared it to what their goals were, you found a gap, you filled the gap, you gave them options, you narrowed it down. Document that. You spend 3 or 4 minutes doing this good documentation here, and it can save $100,000 in legal fees in the future. These disclosures are all fully customizable at each firm level. We think we have some good ones, but obviously fully customizable. Down here at the bottom, places for signatures by the client, the rep, and also an OSJ. When you're finished completing the form, go up to the print button, save it as a PDF on your hard drive, add it into whatever processing system your firm uses, and you're good to go. Also can print it off on your computer. We do not store any of that data in our system. So this is exactly how, at the point of sale, at the time meeting with the client, we can show them what is going on inside their accounts, the fees, the costs, how it works, compare it to our way we do business to flip that switch, get their buy-in at the time of meeting. And this is the type of data that all of your advisors can have at their fingertips for $29 a month. much less than any of these other databases that are out there, much more thorough and actually usable with the client at the time of sale. So I appreciate you turning in here to part number 2. I look forward to speaking with you and answering your questions in person as time permits. And thank you for taking the time to check out SwitchSafe. We look forward to great growth for you and your firm in 2018.